If you went around in the Minecraft community from 2011 to 2012, then you might not have heard of a little map called Skyblock. You spawn on an island. With minimal resources, you create a cobblestone generator with water and lava. You chop a tree, make a pickaxe, and harvest cobblestone. This is now the meta block. You bridge to the other island, making sure not to drop all of the sand into the void. You obtain cactus, melon, and pumpkin seeds, as well as obsidian. You then create an island-side river to plant all your crops, then adventure into the nether, lighting wood to act as a flint and steel. As you go into the nether, you are met with your final island. You get sugarcane, a birch sapling, and an extra ice block. You make sure to harvest the mushrooms and build out your island empire. And one day, we'll look back at where we started and be amazed at how far we have come. So hypixel Skyblock is basically an answer to the what next question people ask after completing regular Skyblock. After around 20 minutes, there's basically no progression left in Skyblock after adventuring to the nether. Compare that to hypixel Skyblock, which is a 500-hour plus game, a game of grinding, and a game of not being in the sky. So just like we did with regular Skyblock, let's go through the progression of hypixel Skyblock. Oh, that's the YouTube upload limit. Okay, let's briefly explain the progression of hypixel Skyblock. You spawn on an island, okay, quite similar so far. You chop a tree, bridge to the neighboring island, okay, pretty similar. You enter a portal and log into Minecraft. You attempt to follow quests, but then you realize that the quest system in hypixel Skyblock is terrible. So you then adventure into the deep caverns. Then you proceed to die 50 times. Interestingly, the progression of this game is similar to an obvious Minecraft clone, Terraria. To traverse in the deep caverns, you can either buy some armor and enchant it, or grind your heart out for some lapis armor, dropped from lapis zombies with a 1% chance per piece, and you can get duplicate pieces. On top of the fact that these take several strikes to kill, and can kill you in one hit. This makes the early part of Skyblock quite challenging. However, you can also just grind some cash by visiting some farming islands, then buy the armor from the auction house, but this isn't very rewarding. So hypixel Skyblock has gone from Skyblock to a budget Minecraft to a prison server. What's next? Well, what lies next is, in my opinion, is the best part of the game. Imagine this next part is when you kill the wall of flesh in Terraria. You enter hard mode, you have complete freedom in everything you do. Oh, I skipped over one little detail. If you even dare to breathe on the enemies, then you will succumb to severe discombobulation. You have two paths that you can take. You can visit the park and level up the foraging skill, which can increase your strength, make some money, and generally prepare for the terrors that lie ahead. Or you can do the other option, an option that will require you to visit the therapist 6 days a week for the rest of your miserable little existence. This option is to visit the spider's den. This option is just like when your first hard mode night arrives in Terraria. You think it isn't too bad, then you die 168 times. However, this place is the optimal place to level up your combat skill, except for a secret zombie cave. But come on, I'd rather kill spiders than stupid zombies. Talking about spiders, there are a lot of them, climbing up walls, on the roof, on the floor, everywhere. You might ask, why do I need to level up my combat skill? Well, this is to access the two quote-unquote endgame locations. Combat 5 for the Blazing Fortress, and Combat 12 for the End. Once you've overcome arachnophobia, it is time for your next challenge, the most useless place in hypixel Skyblock, the Blazing Fortress. It's the nether. Wow, you can kill blazes. About it, bit lame really. If you have strong enough gear, then it helps with getting to Combat 12, and I guess it gives you nether wart as well. Side note, the End in my opinion should require a much higher combat level. I think the Blazing Fortress should require Combat 12, and the End should require Combat 16 or 18. It would just make the early game last longer. which is the best part of the game. Anyway, you've now got access to the end, which is a fitting end game location. You get to fight dragons here, dragons that can obliterate you, but can also drop dragon fragments of that specific dragon, which can be used to make 8 types of dragon armor that all specify in a specific skill in the game, whether that's defense, health, mana, or even enchantment effectiveness, or thunder, just like the lunar armors in Terraria that specify on the classes of the game. So you choose a dragon armor, grind dragons with ender armor that has a 0.02% drop chance from the highest level enderman in the end, or a 1 in 5,000 drop chance per piece, and you can get duplicates. When these endermen also one-shot you and have thousands of health each. Anyway, you got ender armor, which is actually very good armor, only at the end. Then obtained dragon armor. When I played, I got wise dragon armor, which was geared towards intelligence / mana, because... Anyway, what next? Well, time to actually do some socializing, because you are going to enter the absolute best part of the game. Dungeons. Best for the people who live in their parents' basement, and have thousands of hours to port on Minecraft server. Dungeons is undoubtedly the worst thing added to this game. Before we get started, I just want to clarify that I'm not anti-dungeons. I've put a fair few 100 hours into dungeons, and that I want to try and persuade you to at least see where me and a lot of the community is coming from. So after conquering the end, you select your dragon armor of choice. You then need to select your dungeon class. There are 5 dungeon classes: Berserker, Mage, Archer, Tank, and Healer. If you choose defense or health-oriented dragon armor, you should probably select Tank or Healer class. If you chose general damage or general stat increase armor, then you should choose between Berserker or Archer. If you chose wise dragon armor, then you should choose Mage. Simple as that. The first and currently only dungeon is named the Catacombs. It has 7 floors, all of increasing difficulty, where the first 3 floors can be beaten with the very early dungeon armor or your dragon armor. Floor 4 and onwards requires a proper commitment to your dungeon class, buying specific gear oriented to that class, to improve your general damage and survivability. Now this is important for your effectiveness in a dungeon and lowering the amount of times you're going to be screamed at by your team members because you failed one puzzle or died once because you are probably a noob. Sorry, I forgot to explain the basic gist of dungeons. A team of 5 members goes into a dungeon. There are many rooms. Some are clearing rooms, some are puzzles, some are mini-boss rooms, and some are trap rooms. To progress onto the next rooms, you need to find wither keys by killing the boss of the room or clearing out all the enemies in the room to move on to the next room. Eventually, you will find a blood key, which leads you to the blood room. Kill the watcher, complete every room, including stupid secrets, and go into the portal in the blood room. There you'll be met with a specific boss for each floor, where you will need to work together to kill the boss, as a team. After you kill it, depending on how well you did in the dungeon, you'll be given a score and chests will be given to you, with random items varying in value. Coins are used to open the chests, so you can either lose or gain profit with different dungeon chests. To explain the 5 classes, I present to you Parallax.
Healers. Pros. Your abilities are necessary. You are usually needed in floors 6 and up. Cons. You don't do much damage, and use Wish. Why aren't you using Wish? Mage. Pros. Decent for cheap, amazing clearing. Cons. Gets really expensive soon with the Midas staff and hype. Berserker. Pros. Fast. Requires some skill. Good for cheap. Cons. Multiply your 40 mil by 3 for the next weapon. Gets expensive. Archer. Juju and Terminator OP. That's it. Tank. Pros. You're super tanky. With Healer, you are invincible. Cons. You don't do much damage, and it's expensive.
Dungeons is the most grindy thing in this grindy game. Now this would be okay if it led to something, but it doesn't. It just doesn't. The entire endgame is just dungeons. Oh, whoop-de-doo, I just beat floor 7 150 times and got a Necron handle. I craft a Hyperion worth a crisp 400 million coins, and then realized that mages are useless in master mode. Hypixel Skyblock is the best game ever. Oh, what's next after spending weeks of my life in stupid randomized rooms? Oh, I know. stupid randomized rooms that also kill you more often. The only way to beat them is to craft a 1 billion coin bow or grind floor 7 for a drop that has a 0.5% drop chance, where it takes around 10 minutes to beat the floor once. That is 2,000 minutes of your life, if you're lucky, down the drain. Now this is gameplay. If you're struggling to visualize this, imagine you've just obtained your blaze rods and ender pearls, you craft them into eye of enders and exit the nether. Now you have to grind for hundreds of hours to get OP weapons and OP armor, and then there is no ender dragon. Your eye of enders are useless. Instead, there is just what you did, but all over again. Now you might argue, Hypixel can't add anything new. This is because dungeon weapons and armor are way too overpowered, to the point that any new content would be so disconnected from any other island in the Hypixel Skyblock Isles. This can be proven by them trying to nerf all weapons to make them more similar to non-dungeon weapons, the strength nerf. But this is also flawed, because then they aren't strong enough to tackle dungeons. Hypixel have got themselves trapped in an interesting conundrum, and I believe I have come to one single conclusion, which would be the only feasible way to fix Hypixel Skyblock's problem. You've got to admit, although dungeons are technically fantastic, they are not in the spirit and the original excitement of Hypixel Skyblock. Lots of players have started to quit Hypixel Skyblock after grinding their souls out. This is mainly because of the lack of anything new at all, ever. Alright, so what I did is ask everyone on my Discord server, please tell me your thoughts on dungeons. This is for the video that I'm in the process of making, and we got a lot of comments. So I'm just going to show you some messages that people have said. Honestly, dungeons are great, but it was such a large update that I feel like the admins got burnt out and entered it early, and ended up taking some shortcuts, causing bugs, and it to feel a little bit early for what it was said to be. Dungeons is very bad. Dungeons are boring AF. Dungeons are the best part of Skyblock if you have high net worth and play often. Often means 20 hours a day. You just do the same room, same secrets, same mobs over and over. Dungeons are boring AF. Yes. Doesn't connect with other parts of Skyblock. Well, this is true. Then, I posed an interesting question. Okay, one last question. Do you think you would enjoy dungeons more or less if it was an optional activity in Skyblock, not taking up the entire endgame? There was other content to supplement the dungeons. Yes. All good gear is in dungeons, but I have a fix for that. Right now, this guy said Skyblock itself is arse, dungeons are better. I said, why do you think dungeons are better? Just wondering. He said Skyblock itself is just boring since you can one-shot almost anything. In dungeons you can die and you need an amount of skill. You can one-shot anything because of all the overpowered weapons that you got from dungeons that are geared towards dungeons and not the actual wide map. I said, would you enjoy normal Skyblock more if there were harder islands which scaled with endgame equipment? He said yes, definitely. So there is a renounding wanting for English. There's a renounding wanting for more content or supplementary content for dungeon gear and after dungeons. Really, dungeons, it doesn't feel like an endgame. It feels like just a supplementary thing, right? That you can do, it's optional, or something like that. Now, I don't want to talk about the toxic and hate-filled community surrounding dungeons too much. There are a countless amount of videos criticizing Hypixel Skyblock, with people exercising their opinions and experiences. However, I want to quickly cover why I think a fair section of the community is inherently seen as being toxic, which some definitely are. Compared to the relatively laid-back style of Hypixel Skyblock, dungeons are a 100% contrast. As I mentioned previously, because people are pouring lots of their time into dungeons, they want their team to be perfect and for nothing to go wrong. When something does go wrong, they lash out. Dungeon players are also seen as toxic or hate-filled because the top players are absolute metagamers and are leagues above everyone else. They've been grinding dungeons since they came out and everyone wants to catch up to them. To do this, people scam, and a lot of people scam. Because Hypixel Skyblock has a younger player base, a lot of especially new players are very gullible, increasing the scammers' net worth, allowing them to buy new armor and weapons to progress onto the next step. Okay, just hear me out, okay? I promise this plan will work and will suit the needs of most players, and make all the grinding in dungeons pay off still, while providing an enjoyable endgame to the non-dungeon players. So, my first change. Dungeon armor and weapons are disabled outside of dungeons. Now hear me out, okay? This only includes weapons obtained from dungeons or crafted with resources from dungeons, for example, the Spirit Scepter, and not including, say, a dungeonized Midas Staff, or a dungeonized Frozen Scythe. So, firstly, Ancient will still be a Reforge, which is affected by your Catacombs level, so upgrading your Catacombs level will help with the Ancient Reforge. On top of this, every Catacombs level will increase your base stats by a certain point each level, or the stat relative to the class you're playing, like Fairy Souls but for every Catacombs level. Plus, non-dungeon weapons that are dungeonized, on top of giving the same stat bonus in dungeons that they already do, they will also give a stat boost outside of dungeons as well. Okay, so dungeon weapons and armor being overpowered is now fixed. Now bear in mind, the Terminator, the Axe of the Shredded, and the Midas Staff will all still work outside of dungeons, so we've still got some really powerful weapons. Alright, so with powerful weapons, what do we do now? We need powerful enemies to kill. Well, I have two ideas. I'm going to go through my first idea, because I believe it has the most feasibility of happening. So if you're a viewer of the popular content creator Deralius, then you might be aware of the Blazing Fortress revamp that will be released in Skyblock 1.0, aka the full release of Hypixel Skyblock. Now what Hypixel wants to do is make a new part of the Blazing Fortress that is available to late combat level players, maybe combat 28 or higher for example, similar to the Void Gloom place in the end for the Enderman Slayer. So, as an excuse to add this Blazing Fortress new revamp, may I introduce to you the Wither Skeleton Slayer. And it will be the same difficulty as Enderman Slayer, maybe with the tier 4 having 350 million HP for example, to make it a little harder. So, there will be an entrance in the Blazing Fortress that requires combat 28, for example, to enter. Bear in mind, Wither Skeletons spawn in the fortress so you can still do the Slayer, just like the end. So the cave will be an entrance to the new Soul Sand Valley location. So this place will be a sort of dragon's nest, but made of soul sand and nether blocks. Now, in the Soul Sand Valley, mobs will have hundreds of thousands of health each. There will be multiple mobs that spawn, but one will be a special Wither Skeleton, the Zealot variant for the Soul Sand Valley. Now this Wither Skeleton will have a 1 in 420 chance to drop a Wither Catalyst, the same chance as the Zealot to drop a Summoning Eye. 12 Wither Catalysts are used to summon the Wither. Now Wither Catalysts can also be gotten from floor 7 chests. So, doing dungeons can help. There will be 8 types of withers, all with the same names as the Ender Dragon Dragon Armors. For example, Holy Dragon Armor, Old Dragon Armor for example. Except, they will be a lot stronger. For example, Old Dragon Armor, which buffs enchantment effectiveness by 2 times, the Wither variant can multiply it by 4 times or 5 times for example. And a special Wither Sword, which can have the scrolls applied to it, either scrolls that are applied to the Hyperion, and it can be used outside of dungeons. Of course, other stuff can be gotten as well, enchanted soul sand, wither skeleton pets, a mythic wither skeleton pet, and other things can be dropped as well. A new soul sand minion could be added, which would be a very powerful minion, the same speed as snow minion, but soul sand can sell for more, and a new soul sand collection. I hope you actually like this idea, and I think it would be super cool. And Wither Catalysts can be bought from the Bazaar or Auction House for 1.1 mil each. Another option would be to add a new island. I had an idea for an ice island that was similar to the Mist of the Dwarven Caverns for example. So these are my epic ideas. But I think disabling dungeon weapons and armor outside of dungeons is vital for the success of the full game. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this video. It was basically created to provide some insight into my thoughts about Hypixel Skyblock, how I think Hypixel Skyblock could be improved, and the direction that it could take, adding more endgame content. I think dungeons is, for some people, the best part of the game, and for some people, the worst part of the game, and Hypixel really needs to sort it out. With the Blazing Fortress revamp coming in around a year to 2 years time, I think they really need to speed it up and bring that out of 1.0 in the full release, and back into the beta.